I'm pretty mad with Chantel right now.
I don't think you're the only person. I've heard some other complaints.
Okay, Fran's got his phone working with a picture, so I'm going to turn mine off.
Well, I don't see Fran's picture.
Well,
Yeah,
no.
I'm not long.
He hasn't turned his camera on.
Let me find that. Let's see, I don't know how to go back to that. Let's see. No, it'll be that. Oh. I have to start over.
Well, he's starting over, so I'm not going to turn off yet.
You might not be wrong.
Well, I hear something. Somebody else is clearing their throat.
All right, it's not giving me any choices about.
Recording in progress.
Mr. Dale is trying to come in. There he is. Good morning, Mr. Dale.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to everyone.
Okay.
Ooh.
Need to turn off, either turn off your audio or turn off one of your systems, Fran.
Yeah, turn it on.
I did.
No, you didn't. Turn it on. Hold the button to turn it off. Okay, you did. All right. Okay.
I gather it's snowing pretty well over there.
Yeah,
It's
the rows and roads are wide and the grass is starting to turn. Not
Yeah.
deep enough yet.
it's a very fine snow here.
Yes.
Yeah, if we're gonna get, 6 inches, it's gonna have to get a little bigger particles, I think.
Well, if it just keeps going, it doesn't have to. be big
No,
parts.
it's not enough of it. Too dense.
We
Good
shall
morning,
see.
Nana.
Morning.
Good
Now we
morning.
got 2 Lesters. I don't know why. We did. We had a Lester here and a Lester.
Oh. Here one, there one, everywhere one.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
Miss Marie.
All right.
Gary, I have just left you a message, but I figured it out.
Bless your heart.
Yay for me.
You must have if you're here, right?
Yep, that's right. Everybody
So-
all right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's called discovery learning.
I think so. Hands on. Good morning, Kay.
Good morning to you. Glad to see you.
Good to see you. Hey, Nana.
Hey.
Hi, Nana. She's back home.
From faraway Iowa.
Far
away.
Is
Is
it
that the name of your
snowing yet?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes.
a real fine dusting, probably a ½ inch or so far.
Just getting started though, isn't it?
We're gonna get 6 or more inches, I think. Maybe some
Hi,
ice.
Norman.
too.
Well, pray for my Miller out on his tractor. I always get scared when it's slick.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do on a tractor this time of year?
Oh gosh. He
Pick
goes
up
way
bales?
out in the back and feeds all the cows that are back there.
So it picks up a bale or a roll of hay
Yeah.
and it brings it to the barn or brings it.
No, it's in the field, but he goes and gets it and takes it out to the cows.
Okay.
I hope he bundled up.
Yeah, he does.
Good.
Yeah, the
Does it-
animals have to be fed no matter
Right.
what.
Norman, how are things in the big city of Dublin?
As far as I know, they are just doubling every day.
Doubling over, right?
Fastest growing town in Virginia,
Yeah,
doubling every day.
yeah. Yeah. It's a fine snow. It's very slow to accumulate.
Yeah, real
Yeah.
dry. I believe I saw a while ago that the wind chill is something like 8 or 9
Mhm.
spur.
Morning, Lesters.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I got my snow blower out and it's oh, I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, I had to do $100 carburetor job before it would start because I left gas in it over the winter. Over summer. So it's all ready to go, but I don't think it'd do much to this fine dust now. It wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah.
We'll wait till we get some.
The flakes are bigger on my way.
They're getting bigger here.
Yeah, I think they are here too.
Mhm.
You could see them.
Good morning, Rhonda.
There's
Good
one.
morning.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Kent, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Seems like old home week from pandemic period.
This we know how to do, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's good to see all of you today, and I'm glad you're staying home and staying safe. We just have one prayer list update that you are not aware of, I don't think, at this point, and that is that Wayne Barnett is in Montgomery Regional Hospital with COVID, and
Oh dear.
pretty scary.
Oh.
He's freezing.
Mhm.
His O2 was down to 53%, and
Oh,
they
wow.
couldn't get it up to normal
He's a big
with
guy.
paramedics, so they ended up taking him. Hospital said, we're so full, all we can do is try to stabilize you and then send you home. But
Oh, my
last
goodness.
night they had made room for him, and they're going to keep him a couple of days, and had gotten him up to walk a couple of times, so a little
Good.
better. And Mitzi also has COVID, but she has just minor effects of a severe cold, that kind of thing. So, she, even if she was well, they wouldn't let her into the hospital to see him. Nobody can go to the COVID ward. But they were pretty frightened where it got to, and she asked for everyone's prayers. So,
Mhm.
that's the only one I know of. Our service, we began recording our service on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, and Diana spent a lot of time editing everything together yesterday, and it is scheduled to release about 10:55 on both YouTube and Facebook this morning. So I hope you can join us there.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Any updates on some folks that you're aware of that we're not?
Well, Kent, what about Diana's grandmother that died?
They were looking, she did pass away.
I didn't
They're
know.
looking at potentially next Thursday for a funeral, but I don't know if that's been absolutely locked in or not. The last I heard, it was likely to be on Thursday. Yeah.
Where is this grandmother living, or what did she?
Sanford, North Carolina.
Oh, Sanford. Okay.
North Carolina.
I would ask for continuing prayers for our friend Nancy Kent and the loss of her husband, Lou. Dale, I was in Radford Drug the other day, and I heard that Scott Armentrout is doing better, that he's having physical therapy, and they've got him in, I'm guessing it must be like a step down program. He's no longer in the hospital room. Have you heard anything different?
Yes, I heard that he was coming home yesterday.
Oh, good.
So well, in physical therapy that they released him to home, and he was supposed to be home on Saturday. Not yet.
Okay. This was Thursday, I think, that I got that report. That's good. This is Scott Armentrout, who's an owner of Radford Drug. Real faithful members of Central Methodist Church, but longtime residents and just good folks. Had double pneumonia and a heart condition, had to have a stent put in. All sort of got together at the same time, so it was a perfect storm.
Is he the brother of the sheriff or?
Yes, his brother's Mark. Mhm.
And he's a pharmacist.
Scott is the pharmacist, yeah.
Yeah.
Is he in his 50s, Gary? Do you know?
That would be my guess, early 50s, yeah.
Well, he's my son's age, Derek. Yeah, I knew
Yeah.
Scott a long time ago.
Yeah, he and I'll tell you who his contemporaries are. He and Jimmy Moore, Dave and Priscilla's son, I think
Yeah.
are the same age, and trying to place some others in that generation.
I also got a call from Pete Miller last night, and apparently he's up and at 'em again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? Let's have a word of prayer before we start. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the snow, because every time we see manifestation of your creation, it just reminds us again just how much you love us. What a beautiful, beautiful, perfectly designed and constructed creation you really have allowed us to enjoy. The beauty of that is something that just absolutely overwhelms us every time we turn around. And we give you thanks for that. And we ask that you would help us to be good stewards of this gift, because it truthfully is a very special, special one. We also would pray this morning for many people who are in the face of this heavy snow and ice, and COVID, and so many other disruptions in their lives, are finding that is so very difficult for them to meet the different challenges that they're encountering. And so we lift up our prayers to you on their behalf this morning, and ask those who do not have good access to cold, to warmth and food and all the things that they need to live a life of just at least basic comfort. Give them relief and help all of us to be able to, along with so many others, continue to reach out to those folks. We ask as well that you would be with those who are suffering from the ravages of the pandemic. Our dear friend Wayne Barnett is one of those, and we thank you for the fact that there are so many gifted and talented medical specialists who literally put their lives on the line to be sure that these folks recover and are able to resume their lives. And so we ask for your blessings on all those who are mentioned, but we've mentioned by name all of those who are on our prayer list this morning, for the caregivers, for the first responders, all of those who just give and give and give, and do so just simply out of a desire to make life a little bit better for everyone else. We thank you for our church. As always, we give you thanks for the direction that you're leading us. This journey that we're following you on is one that opens up new doors of opportunities every day for us. We thank you as well for this opportunity to come to you, even if it is by way of technology, that we can talk about your word. And in that discussion, we can gain some understanding that can help us not only share that word with others, but use that word to enrich our own lives. So be with us in these moments today as we come together as a Bible study group now, and then later enjoy the worship service that is going to be something that will also serve to enrich our understanding and our love for you. Be with us as we pray, as we study, and as we have opportunities to fellowship. But as always, we ask that you would be with us as we go about our daily lives as your church. And it's in Jesus' name that we lift this prayer. Amen. Gifts. I think it's interesting that this lesson comes just right on the heels of Christmas, because we have sort of indelibly imprinted in our minds the notion of gifts. We spent a lot of time planning and thinking about gifts we were going to give to certain people. And then we enjoyed being able to actually watch them open those gifts and use them and enjoy them and appreciate the thought that went behind the gift. Kind of an analogy there, isn't it? When we think about God's gifts to us, God's spiritual gifts to us, it's pretty much the same thing, because God was very thoughtful in his creation. He was very thoughtful and intentional in the way in which he put all of those pieces together, and particularly us wild, crazy, sometimes real hard-headed human beings. But he loves us anyway, and he gives gifts to us, and he just keeps on giving, and he just keeps on giving, and he just keeps on giving. I have to also believe that, like us, when we open one of those gifts and put it to use, I suspect he smiles pretty broadly, just as we smiled when we gave a loved one a gift that we noted that they truthfully appreciated the gift itself and the love that was all behind that gift. Our scripture today is one that we've seen, read, heard it preached many times. Hello, Simonis. But it's one that I think is worthy of visiting on a regular basis, because there is much to inform us, particularly in these very difficult times in which we find ourselves. Paul is writing a letter to a small little church in Corinth. We know that this church was very special to him. It was a church that he dearly and deeply loved. And it was a church that he cared so deeply about, he did not mind being totally honest with them as a way of sort of keeping them on track with what he had tried to teach them when he presented the gospel to them. But like all human organizations, over a period of time, things can kind of come unhitched. As we would say, the wheel sort of falls off the axle. And that happens because we just simply are human beings. And there come points in our lives in which we just mess up. Or we do it unknowingly, and it's the kind of thing just sort of creeps into our lives. And then over a period of time, it just becomes part of who we are. In this particular instance, I think that what God was trying to do was to apply the old Barney Fife philosophy. Nip it in the bud. I can still see that scene. I could get all giggly every time I do. And so he was trying to help this young congregation of Christians come to grips with and solve a problem that, if it were not addressed, could potentially bring doom to the church. And it was basically all wrapped up under the understanding of what we know as spiritual pride. Pride goeth before the fall is the old statement that we've heard so many times. Each of us has gifts. Wednesday night, Kent did a masterful job of talking with us about that and reminding us of the nature of those gifts and how they come to us, and a little bit about each one and how we are endowed with certain abilities as a result of those gifts. And also the fact that when God gives us gifts, we get rewards as well. Because when we apply those gifts, we get payback for it. A smile, a thank you, someone who accepts Christ as their Savior. If we have the gift of evangelism, for example, we see someone whose life is turned around as a result of us being able to just talk with them and give them that gift of encouragement and helping them see that they can get back on track. And so this was the problem. It's sort of like some of the early formats of GPS systems. You turn that rascal on and you get moving, and you all of a sudden, oops, you missed that exit and you take the wrong one, and that system says recalculating. Remember that? And so what Paul was going to do here with this church in Corinth was help them get recalculated, get back on track, follow the right direction, take the correct road. And he did so in a beautiful, beautiful way. Here's the crux of the problem. The problem was that the people in that church in Corinth were well versed in the notion of gifts. They knew what those were about, spiritual gifts we're talking about now. And over time, there were people who in a service or in group activities, whatever they might have been, would engage in what they called speaking in tongues. And they saw this as a manifestation of a spiritual gift that transcended all others. There is nothing that can compare with being able to speak in tongues. In other words, they had begun to create a hierarchy, greater to lesser, among the gifts. We're going to come back to that later. And in this instance, they saw this really strange phenomenon of speaking in tongues as being especially notable. Let's go back to the day of Pentecost and see if we can get the source of this. You know the story. I could even ask somebody to go ahead and tell it. You can do it if you want to, save me having to talk. But remember, Jews had gathered by the hundreds to celebrate Pentecost, one of the holiest days of the Jewish year. And Peter and some of the other apostles were there. And literally, as one commentator referred to him, said he became a street preacher. He didn't have a megaphone or an electrical amplifier or a box to stand on. But I suspect what he did was he just began talking to a group and sharing the gospel message with them. There were two things that happened here, though. These people came from all over. Remember the diaspora, where the Jews had been scattered to all the different places, not just in the Middle East, but Asia Minor and so many other places. So they spoke, if they didn't speak different languages, they spoke different dialects of some languages, and those don't work. You might as well be speaking a different language. But when Peter started preaching, first thing that happened was the people listened. All my teacher friends in this class will tell you, if they ain't listening, they ain't learning. If they're listening, you have their attention. Second thing was, I really and truly do think that one reason they were listening so intently was that they understood what Peter was saying, even though he was not a native speaker from where they came from. He had a different language, but they understood every word he said. And the results, as we know, were as miraculous as that gift that God had just given. I've been to 2 countries where I did some teaching, training, whatever you want to call it, Turkey and Armenia. And for the most part, in both places, English was not a primary language. So particularly in Turkey, I was speaking to a group of about 300 college and university deans from all over Turkey. And there were 2 translators who were seated up in a booth at the back of the auditorium. I had on a headset. And they were translating for me when one of the people in the audience would ask me a question. But they were also translating immediately everything that I said to the members of the audience who did not speak English. Pretty powerful stuff. But I tell you what, to my teacher friends, that is one hard way to teach. It is very hard, very, very hard. In Armenia, we had slides that we used, and I had one screen over here that had the slides in English, one over here that had the slides in Armenian, and a translator standing right by me. She was very good. She could even understand my Southern speak. Peter didn't have that. And Peter was not probably a very highly educated man when you stop and think about it. Oh, he wasn't a dummy by any means, but in terms of having a very, what's the word I want? Sophisticated education that would allow him to learn other languages, that just was not going to happen. But here he was speaking, and people were understanding him. A lot of folks use the word glossolalia. If you got my notes, I put a little attachment in there because I think this is important that we get an understanding of this. They use the word, they say that this is a manifestation of glossolalia, and it really isn't. Glossolalia means speaking in gibberish. It's something that no one else can understand. And in truth be known, the person who's speaking it probably doesn't understand, even though he or she thinks they are saying what they know, but that's neither here nor there. What they were really speaking, okay, you're getting your money's worth today. This is something you can share with someone you love deeply and just confuse them greatly. They were experiencing what's called xenoglossia. Xenoglossia, that simply means speaking in a language that can be understood by other people. And it's the kind of thing that everyone, you can speak Armenian, you can speak Urdu, you can speak any other different language. I'm speaking in English, they understand every word I say. You won't find recorded examples of xenoglossia very much if you scan the history books. But here on the day of Pentecost, that is exactly what happened. I'm not going to demean the ecstatic aspects of glossolalia and speaking in tongues, because people are moved by the Holy Spirit in different kinds of ways, and I honor that. I've been in services where people practiced glossolalia, and I frankly was lost. I thought, God bless you. Some of them even started doing what they call dancing in the spirit, which I think is also good. If that's what helps them get closer to God, that's fine. But in this instance, we've got to understand here that this was an even greater miracle that the Holy Spirit was performing here. I mean, we listen to glossolalia with children when they start trying to speak, they babble, and they're trying to express something, but they just don't have the words to do it. And in this instance, though, it was just the reverse. God gave these people the ability to understand every word that Peter was saying. Now, that's a mighty, mighty, mighty miracle in my estimation. And it's one that I think transcends anything else that we could throw into the mix about discussing this whole instance of confusion about gifts among the church in Corinth. Bottom line, Paul says, there is no hierarchy. I'm going to read you our scripture just real quickly, but there are other references to it that you can read. You're familiar with them, and I bet you're going to see the same thing. There is no point in here in which you could create a hierarchy from what Paul writes. They're all equal. Now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good. Hang on to those two words, To one, there is given through the Spirit a message of wisdom. To another, a message of knowledge by means of the same Spirit. To another, faith by the same Spirit. To another, gifts of healing by that one Spirit. To another, miraculous powers. To another, prophecy. To another, distinguishing between spirits. To another, speaking in different kinds of tongues. And to still another, the interpretation of tongues. Listen carefully. All these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and he distributes them to each one just as he determines. Did you hear hierarchy? Did you hear greater to lesser? No, it's not there. And I've looked and I could not find it. So there's a couple of three things we want to pull from this. First one is every Christian has his or her gifts. You may have one that just is overwhelming. I mean, it sort of is transcendent. But I bet if you'll look closer, and if you'll really be thoughtful and prayerful about it, you'll find you've got more than one. The inventory that Kent spoke about on Wednesday night, I may be using the wrong term, Kent. When you take that, yeah, you'll see a gift that is the predominant one, or seems to be the strongest one, but you're going to find there are maybe one or two or even three others. And you may say, oh, I have the gift of hospitality, so all I need to do is be on the social committee. But if you look, you may also see that you have a gift of administration. And your stronger gift, that may become it, and you might want to serve on the finance committee. You see what I'm getting at here? So everybody has gift. Rick Warren, you're all familiar with him. He's the pastor of the mega church. Where is it? Out in Colorado or somewhere out there. Anyway, he had this little thing that he came up with in his book titled The Purpose-Driven Life. You may be familiar with it. Some of you may have read it. He said that all of us are, listen to this, shaped by God in a unique way. I like that. Shaped by God in a unique way. His acrostic, SHAPE, S-H-A-P-E, stands for spiritual gifts, heart, abilities, personality, and experience. Now, he does not deny all of the other gifts that Paul writes about. He just is trying to get a way for us to have a little bit deeper understanding of it. And what he goes on to say is that there are people who will have the same gift, but they might be engaged in a little bit different activities and vocations. Let me give you an example. If there are three people who all have completed college and have a teaching license to teach, sounds like they're all pretty much the same, doesn't it? No, couldn't be farther from the truth. Doesn't matter whether you're a music major, whether you're a chemistry major, you got to go a different way. Here's an example. Marie and Kathy worked with little bitties, early childhood education. Boy, that's a special area. I always said God smiles on special ed and kindergarten teachers. But then Kay wanted to teach middle and high school people. I love teaching middle school. They're crazy, but you got to love them anyway. High school is different. They know it all. So a little bit different kind of thing. Someone else might have a degree, but they decide what they're going to do is mentoring inner city youth. Not in a structured school system, just going out and helping young people who probably have dropped out of school. You see my point? So we can have identifiable. the gift of teaching. But wow, look at the different ways in which it shows up. We never, ever really know. Second one is all spiritual gifts are important to the church. Paul's analogy is a good one. He said the church is like a body. You got to have all the pieces working together or nothing works. We all have to work together. We all have to support each other. We all have to take care of each other to ensure the health of that body. And we have to have the health of that body as our North Star, that we're always working toward, that we're always moving toward, and we're working to get there. Third thing, we're all together. We're all one body. And listen to this, though. Some of you know this. In my first professional life experience, I was band director. In any musical ensemble, if it's going to be good, effective, you got all of these different people, and somehow or another, you got to bring them all together. Now, if you're a band director, if you had experience in a band, and if you played trumpet, God bless you. But here's an example. As a band director, the hardest thing for me to do was pretty much what Paul was dealing with the church in Corinth. Trying to make people understand you're not the most important dude in the whole group. Trumpet players don't believe that. They believe they're endowed with not only the gift, but the responsibility of being heard over everybody else. All right? But you want an ensemble to blend. Those of you in the choir, you've heard Kay say that. We've got to blend better. And when you blend, when you hear a musical organization that is blending, you don't hear sopranos or altos or trumpets or flutes or oboes or bassoons or percussion. You hear one sound. And then later, as you begin to listen closer, yeah, you'll hear the altos and sopranos and trumpets and flutes and piccolos and all these other kinds of things. But it all works together for the ultimate outcome, which is beautiful music. Right? So this is what Paul is talking about when he says we're all one body. We have to set aside our own biases and personal beliefs and who we are and how important we are in favor of the more important role and goal that we're working toward here. And that's making beautiful music. In the church, it's exactly the same way. Nobody stands out. We all just work. I'm looking at a bunch that understands that. We just do the work. We're not looking for compensation. If somebody says, thank you for doing that, yeah, that's wonderful. And it makes you feel good and appreciated and all that, which is perfect. But that's not why we do those things. We do it because God gifted us. And there's something within us that compels us to bring that gift to life and to use it as God has intended us to do so. Let's go a step further with this gifting thing. Let me carry my musical metaphor a little bit forward. If I had stopped during a concert with my band and saying, ask the audience, how many different gifted players, how many different gifts do you see manifested here on the stage? Oh, they would talk about clarinet players, flute players, trumpet players, God bless them, trombone players, that's my group, percussion. They could identify all these other kinds of things, but they'd be leaving out one part of that whole concert experience. It's the gift of encouragement. Parents are going to show up for those things. right? But when members of the community show up, when people who don't have necessarily a direct relationship with people in the ensemble show up, wow, they show up. Encouragement, step number one. Number two, they applaud, they express their appreciation. They let those performers know you're doing good. Then when it's all over, they make every effort to come and individually thank them. And for young people, that is as formative as anything could ever be. To encourage a young person in using his or her gifts or talents, whatever they may be, is huge. We never know. We never ever know what the end result is going to be. A few years back, I got an email message from a young lady, and she said, I don't know. She said, Mr. E. So I knew she was from Spring Hill, was in my band there. Mr. E, I don't know if you remember me or not, but my name is Gayla Whitlow. Gayla played trumpet in my band at Spring Hill High School. She was the last person that I would have ever thought would do anything dealing with music. I mean, she was okay, sweet young lady, really good. She said, I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciated the experiences I had and what you taught me. She said, I am now a music therapist working for NASA with the astronauts. Wow. Now that's huge. The same thing happens with the way in which we use our gifts. We give a word of encouragement to somebody. They're able to lift themselves up from their circumstances, whatever they might be, and move ahead a little bit with their lives. I would like to bet that usually people who go through that kind of experience, when they have the opportunity to give a word of encouragement, they do also, even though that may not be their predominant gift. Because they have been gifted, they have to give as well. You got that? I think that's a pretty important piece of this. Now, there's one more dimension that I'm going to hush. Recall Paul, the root problem that he was looking at was spiritual pride. And the fact that some people felt that they were better than others because of certain gifts they had. And because I have this gift, you're a notch or two below me. They began to demean other people because they couldn't, in this case, speak in tongues. So that was the manifestation of the problem and the biggest problem. But there's another aspect of this. We can appreciate, we can admire other people's gifts, but sometimes in doing so, we don't want to elevate ourselves, and we wind up demeaning the gifts that we do have. I think about my grandmother, Grandma Ellerman. Immigrated to this country when she was about 5 years old from Germany. I never saw her use a cookbook in her life. She made to die for yeast rolls and biscuits. And every time she served them, people would just say, "Oh, Ms. Ellerman, how do you do that?" And she said, "Oh, I don't know. I just throw some stuff together." Now, that's a small example, but if we're not careful, we can demean our own gifts to the extent that we're reluctant to use them. And that is such a great shame. One more me example, then I'm not going to talk about me anymore. When I was in high school, you may find this, well, you may not find it so hard to believe. My goal in going to college was to go into wildlife management, become a game warden. Hey, I'm a swamp boy. But I played the trombone like a son of a gun. Everybody who saw me said, you ought to go into music. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And so I went to college, and reluctantly I did, because I got a scholarship in music. But I fought it, and fought it. I still kept in the back of my mind thinking about wildlife management, game warden, wearing that nice green uniform and those funny little Smokey the Bear hats. Oh, I thought that was the coolest thing. But I kept fighting it, Reminds me of a quote from George Bernard Shaw, who was never short for pithy statements. Someone once came up to him and talked about how they admired his gift of oratory. And here's what he said. The person said, you have a marvelous gift for oratory. How did you develop it? Shaw responded, I learned to speak as men learn to skate or cycle, by doggedly making a fool of myself until I got used to it. I think that is so great. And I read that and I said, he's talking about me. I won't even talk about the fact that I had to take mathematics 5 times before I graduated from college. I used the same professor. We got to be good friends. But I knew nothing about chemistry and physics. I was a dummy on that stuff. But I could play the trombone. And I also found out that I liked teaching people. So I became a teacher. I even fought that. First education course I took, Education 500, Louisiana Tech. Professor's name was Dr. Crow. I made a D in it. They put me on probation in the teacher education program. Came back and took it again, and don't you know, the only section that was open was Dr. Crow again. But I snookered him, I made a C. The rest is history. I found out that teaching was really what I wanted to do. It was something I did not even know it was there, but it was something that I truly wanted to do. I even thought at one time about being a lawyer. That would have been really crazy. But teaching was what I wanted to do. So if Paul were to tell us to value your own gift, just as you value others' gifts, that would be a good lesson for us to take away from this scripture. So what we have to do is be honest with ourselves. You know, there's the 13th commandment. He who tooteth not his own horn, the same shall not be tooted. Don't deny the fact that you're good at something, that it's something that is your passion, something that you feel God endowed and inspired to do. Do it, and you're going to get further inspired, further motivated, and you're going to feel just good all over. You know that. You know that. So let's wrap this thing up a little bit. We've talked about gifts. Kent, again, did a beautiful job Wednesday night talking about them. Diana's going to talk about them today. You're going to be loaded up with gifts before this weekend gets over. But I want you to remember one thing. If you don't take anything away from this study today, it's not just using our gifts that's important. Did you hear me? It's not just using our gifts that's important. We have to use them. The most important thing we do is that we use our gifts for God. And we use our gifts for God as a way of blessing other people. If we don't have those two things in balance, it's not going to really work like God intended for it to work. So we don't just use our gifts, we use them for God. One writer used an analogy. I had to look at it real hard, but I finally thought, yeah, that's pretty good. He said, when you drive a car, the speed at which you drive is not really all that important. He's really saying, yeah, it is. But I mean, that's not the main thing you focus on. What you really are focused on is where you're going. Right? Speed is just something that helps you to get there. But ultimately, you're looking at where you're going. Reminded me of a quote, and I couldn't remember for the life of me who said it, and I didn't have time to figure it out. But Jan Odell, bless her heart, Kathy, after she got my note, she sent me a message. It didn't say anything but the name of the source of it. And I thought, that lady's good. Eleanor Powell is the lady who actually penned this statement first. Here it is. What we are is God's gift to us. What we become is our gift to God. Ain't that good? That's one of those things that we could almost make little desk tent things and stick it on your desk or on the wall, or maybe even make at our age, wouldn't this be cool if we all got tattoos with that on our arms or something like that? That would be revolutionary. So I think what we all have to do, we're already doing it. Everyone that's on this call is doing it. And I don't mean to imply otherwise by the way I've tried to present this study today. But let's make a commitment to continue to, in our lives, to the extent that we possibly can, use our gifts. Use our gifts that God has given so lovingly to us, and be thankful to the giver of that gift. And show our thanks by letting that gift be used to bless other people. That's all I've got today. John Simone's, I've been seeing flocks of robins in my yard and I can't figure it out. I think they must have gotten blown in from Mississippi or somewhere in the deep warm South, but I suspect I hope they went back to where they were.
We've been saying the same thing, Gary.
Yeah. I couldn't believe it. I saw them about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I thought it was a real cold day, and I heard them when I went outside, and I thought, that can't be robins. Then I looked down in the woods and
just flit around one tree to the next, just keep moving around.
Yeah.
They're
gonna go anywhere they can find worms. Isn't that right, John? Very much like us. Comments, rebuttals. Feel free to speak your mind. Share with each other.
Or any kind of soft fruit. Robins. They eat soft fruit. They won't eat seeds, though, at the feeder.
They eat our holly berries.
Yes. Soft fruit. Yeah, soft fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So far as gifts go, when you mentioned speaking in tongues and glossolalia and so forth, it doesn't seem that that's as divisive an issue as it used to be back in the 70s, and I'm not hearing as much about it. It was a major thing, at least where we were in our church back in the 70s, and maybe it was our location. Yeah, but I think the problem was that, well, I was certainly never gifted that way, but the people who were, at least in our experience, often did seem to prioritize that gift.
They did. I agree with you.
And that's one thing that made it difficult to even have them in the same congregation.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're human beings and we're perceptive. And I think anytime we try to elevate ourselves above others when there's no really good reason for it,
Yeah.
you're going to lose. And either people will learn to live with it or they'll go somewhere else.
Mhm.
Gary,
Yeah.
I felt the exact opposite. When I was in my early teens, we moved to a church that had a lot of speaking in tongues and dancing. And two of the main ones who often spoke in tongues were the best Christian women I have ever known.
Yeah.
I mean, even up to today.
I have seen that too. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Well, were they Pentecostal? I mean, did they come out of that denomination?
Yes.
I was going to say, I think that is a definite part of that denomination. That's a different thing from the kind of, it seems to me it's different from what we experienced in Tidewater, which was largely influenced down there by Pat Robertson. It was a new thing to many of these people. And I think because it was new, they had not grown up with it. It was a new manifestation, and it was really striking. I mean, I never heard anybody speak in tongues. My husband did. We had a Sunday school teacher in our church who spoke in tongues, and he would demonstrate for his teenage Sunday school class. And
Marie, Kay, and Gary, let me ask a question. I've never heard that or experienced that. How and when would that occur?
Usually at my church where I went, it was during the music.
Yes.
Or at the end of the service during the altar call.
Yeah. Once they, and Marie's right, where I heard it, and I wish Kay were here because she was with me, but it was the same thing. It was after something that was a really excitable experience, like music, where everybody's standing up and clapping, and that's when you see the dancing, and then you would sometimes see people be slain in the spirit.
Yes.
Where they would literally pass out.
Fall out. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't frightening for me, even as a child.
No, it was not.
It felt, I don't even know a word that would cover it. I felt joyous.
Well, I admired the people. I don't know that I wanted necessarily to do it, but I thought, wow. And I had no idea whether anyone else understood them or anything about it, but I thought that someone would feel so moved spiritually to do any of those things. I thought that's admirable. Mm-hmm. Now, I draw the line with snake handling. Yeah. That's stupid. Give me God if I'm wrong, but that's just plain old stupid. I think I've mentioned to you Salvation on Sand Mountain by Dennis Covington. If you haven't read it, it's fascinating. I mean, there's also a documentary that was created based on that. It was down in Georgia.
Marie, excuse me, Marie, let me ask, were there people then in the congregation that actually understood what the others were saying? Do you know?
I think a lot of times there were, and no one knew it. I mean, it maybe happened after the service or something, but both of the ladies that I'm thinking of right now, who were both just angelic and still are to me, or were, both of them would oftentimes interpret what they had just spoken.
Remember that that Paul's writing said that there are those who speak in tongues and those who can interpret. The experiences we had that were just that. There were those who were not prophets, but interpreters, and someone would speak in tongues and they would translate. Now, whether they were literally translating or if they were just sharing their own experiences. I don't know.
Well, Paul spoke in tongues. He said he did.
Yes.
And I think where the problems in the early church were, it was that it caused confusion. People were babbling in a lot of different tongues, apparently, from what I get out of it. And no one could interpret it, or no one did interpret it. Is that correct?
Exactly. And it's like maybe even the experiences that Maria and I had, there were a lot of people probably walked out of those services saying, what was that?
Yeah.
Because it had no meaning to them except watching these people manifest, their spiritual joy or excitement, whatever. Kent, do you have anything to add to this conversation? You're being awfully quiet.
I don't really. I have never been a part of a service where people spoke in tongues. One of my sons, for a while, went to a church in Radford, a small church on Noblin Street that did some of that. But I suspect it was more because of his interest in a girl than anything else that he did go there.
Yeah.
That when Nancy and I were in college in Charleston, it was a raging controversy, and it was a raging controversy in the Roman Catholic Church in Charleston.
Yes,
Yes, it was.
As well as the Protestant churches,
Yes,
and
it
it was extremely divisive. And in classes, religion classes, it was, there was a little bit of rancor about it there too. I feel like what maybe happened over time is that people made it clear what the position of their church was going to be, and then everybody just settled into a church that they were comfortable with, and then moved on from that.
I wonder if also, and I mean, this just occurred to me, so I maybe need to think about it a little bit more, but I'll throw it out there. The mainstream churches, we talk about contemporary services, which is a misnomer, but nonetheless, we know what we're talking about when we say so many people are looking for a contemporary service. And contemporary services, the way I see them and understand they're conducted, are not that far removed from services we went to where there was speaking in tongues. What's it called? 7-Eleven music. You sing 7 words 11 times.
Yes.
You just repeat the same things over and over and over, and people get really, really juiced up for it. And I'm not knocking that. If that's their glory, go for it. But I've wondered if, because that expanded so quickly and to such a great extent, if these examples that Maria and I have seen they're probably still there. In fact, I'm sure they are, particularly in the Pentecostal denomination. It's just sort of pushed aside in favor of this other. I don't know. That's just a thought I had.
Can I ask a question about this? Is speaking in tongues, is it a voluntary thing, or does it come on spontaneously to people?
Spontaneous is what I saw.
Spontaneous. They don't say, well, now I'm going to get up and speak in tongues.
No. In fact, I've talked to some people who say, I did not speak tonight because the Spirit did not move me to do so.
Okay.
So it's a spontaneous manifestation of the Spirit. Is the way that I've understood it.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? We got 16 minutes to fill our chocolate, coffee, or tea cups and hook up with YouTube or Facebook. So good to see some of you who are back with your face-to-face classes, and I'm proud of that. I'm glad you're able to do that, and hope we'll all be able to do so next week. But if you can't, my bunch, we're on every Sunday morning at 9:45, live, virtual, whatever.
And the snow coming down is beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yes,
Oh,
it
it
is.
is.
Oh, yeah, it is.
It's
It is.
gorgeous.
Y'all be safe, be warm.
Could I ask Kent a question?
Sure.
Kent, did you all record Wednesday night's service?
You mean the choir rehearsal? Oh, you mean the spiritual gift? Well, we did we recorded both, but most of the quality of the choir rehearsal didn't come out very well. So I'm not sure what we will see today because Diana did all the editing on that.
Well, I was actually asking
did-
about the spiritual gifts.
Right. I did record that. I need to edit it out, the early comments and the end comments that are not relative to it. Hope to do that this afternoon, and once I do, I'll put it up on the website. There is a new page on our web where you can go to for spiritual gifts, and it'll be posted there where you can follow that.
Oh, good.
It
Good,
really
thank
is.
you.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was any way that Wednesday night service could be recorded every week.
Oh,
For
sure.
those of us who are in the choir and trying to get home, we miss like the beginning where we,
Yeah.
you know, get filled in on the prayer requests and that kind of thing.
Right. There definitely is. It's easy enough to do. It's a little slower process to upload because upload speeds are so slow for video. And we have to figure out a way to perhaps limit access because we don't want the prayer list discussions to go out to the
Right.
world. So
Right.
if we can figure that
That
out.
just occurred to me when you were talking, and I was thinking to myself, oh, I'm so sorry I missed that. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to get it up by the end of day today.
well, you just take your time. I'll have plenty of time to look at it in the future.
Okay.
Well, I will tell
Thank
you, Kathy, among the many other good things about that was talking about access to the spiritual gifts inventory, if you've never taken it, or if it has been a very long time since you
Oh,
took it.
wow.
Yeah.
No, I've never taken it.
And that's
Do it.
available on the website too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Scary.
Bye, guys. Love y'all.
Love you.